Welcome back, everyone. We've made it. This is our 8th and final explainer on the Samkhya Karika. This is the endgame. For 7 sessions, we've been piecing together this incredibly intricate puzzle of existence. And now, finally, we've arrived at the verses that answer the ultimate question. Why does any of this whole cosmic show, even happen? Let's dive right in.
I want you to think of this last section as a kind of philosophical detective story. We have all the pieces on the board, right? We've got Prakruti, this dynamic but totally unconscious nature, and we've got Purusha, the conscious but completely inactive witness. The case has been building, and now it's time to solve the one final central mystery.
And here it is. This is the question that's been sitting at the heart of everything. If Prakriti, the engine of the entire universe, is unconscious, how on earth can it work towards a goal as deep and specific as the liberation of consciousness? I mean, it sounds like a total contradiction, right? Well, this is the central paradox of Samkhya. And believe me, Karikas 57 through 64 are the brilliant solution.
So, our investigation kicks off with the very first clues. How does Samkhya even begin to explain a purpose without a conscious planner? The text gives us a series of really powerful analogies that completely reframe how we think about purpose in the natural world.
Our first piece of evidence comes in Karika 57. Let's just listen to the Sanskrit for a moment. Vatsa vivruddhi nimittam kshirasya yatha pravrutti ajanyasya. Purusha vimoksha nimittam tatha pravrutti pradhanasya. 57.
Okay, now let's see what that actually means. Here's the translation, which gives us our first major clue. Just as the flow of unintelligent milk is for the nourishment of the calf, so the activity of pradhana is for the liberation of Purusha. This analogy is absolutely key.
And boom, just like that, the problem starts to dissolve. Think about it. Milk has no plan, no intention to feed a calf, and yet its very function is perfectly aimed at that goal. This is what philosophers call a natural teleology, a purpose that's just built into the system, no conscious mind required. You know, the commentators had slightly different takes. Gaudapada saw it as a big, complex process. The cow eats grass, which becomes milk for the calf. Vasaspati Mishra saw it more simply. Milk just naturally flows for the calf. But either way, the point is the same, and it's a game changer. Purpose of action does not require a conscious actor.
Karika 58 then gives us a second, complementary clue, but this time it pulls from a human perspective. Here's the Sanskrit. Atsukyana nivrityartham yatha kriyasu pravartate lokaha, purushasya vimokshartham pravartate tadvad avyaktam. 58.
And the translation really brings this idea home for us. Just as people engage in action for the removal of anxiety or desire, so the unmanifest engages in activity for the liberation of Purusha. So this takes that same basic idea and frames it in a way we can all relate to. Why do we do things? Well, usually to satisfy some need, to get rid of some restlessness or longing. The text is saying, you can think of Prakriti's activity in a similar way, as a cosmic movement to resolve the problem of Purusha's apparent entanglement. Now, this is so important. This does not mean Prakriti feels anxiety or desire, not at all. It just means its activity has the same logical structure. It's a process that moves toward a resolution. And in this grand case, that resolution is liberation.
All right, let's move on to our next set of clues. If Prakriti's activity is basically a performance for Purusha, what happens when the show's over? This leads us to one of the most famous, most beautiful images in all of Indian philosophy.
And here we have it, the famous dancer analogy in Karika 59. The Sanskrit is just wonderfully poetic. Listen to this. Rangasya darshayitva nivartate nartaki yatha. Nrityat purushasya tathatmanam prakashya vimivartate prakritihi. 59.
And here's the beautiful translation. Just as a dancer, having displayed herself on the stage, withdraws from the dance, so Prakriti, having revealed herself to Purusha, withdraws. So let's really unpack what this means.
This image is just brilliant because it illustrates such a subtle but vital point. When the dancer leaves the stage, she doesn't vanish, right? Her performance for that specific audience is just over. In the same way, Prakriti performs by creating this whole world of experience. Once a particular Purusha sees the performance for what it is, once it realizes, hey, that's not me, I'm just the audience, the show is over for that Purusha. This means liberation isn't some kind of cosmic apocalypse where the world ends. It's simply the end of nature's binding display for one single consciousness.
Karika 60 goes even deeper into this dancer's motivation, or I should say Prakriti's motivation. Nana vidhair upayer upakarinya anupakarinah pumsah gunavatya agunasya satah tasyartham aparthakam charati. 60.
And the translation just spells out the selfless, completely one-sided nature of this whole process. Prakriti, endowed with the gunas, works by many means for the sake of Purusha, who is without gunas and gives nothing in return, acting without benefit to herself.
This verse makes the dynamic crystal clear. It is a one-way street. Prakriti, full of activity and qualities, does absolutely everything. And Purusha, who has no qualities, does nothing and gives nothing back. It's a non-reciprocal relationship. Gaudapada said the many means are all the different life forms and experiences that Prakriti cooks up. Mishra used this powerful image of a selfless servant who just works without expecting anything. The core idea is radical. All the work, all the cosmic labor, belongs entirely to nature, and it's all done for the sake of that silent witness, consciousness.
This all leads to this really beautiful, poetic statement in Karika 61, where the text gives an almost personal quality to Prakriti's retreat. Prakritehi sukumarataram na kinchit astiti me matir bhavati. Yadrishtasmiti punarna darshanam upaiti purushasya. 61.
In my view, nothing is more modest than Prakriti, who, once knowing I have been seen, does not show herself again to Purusha. I mean, how lovely is that? The verse gives an almost moral, aesthetic quality to Prakriti's withdrawal. It's not just a mechanical process stopping. It's presented as an act of modesty, of a dignified retreat. Once the truth is out, once she's been seen for what she is, the game of mistaken identity is over, and she just gracefully exits the stage for that particular viewer. Okay, take a deep breath. We've gathered the clues. Prakriti acts with an unconscious purpose, like milk for a calf. She performs like a dancer and then withdraws with modesty. But now we come to the great reveal. This is the moment in the detective story where everything gets turned on its head and we realize we've been looking at the crime scene all wrong from the very beginning.
Get ready, because this is the climax of the entire Samkhya Karika. This is the philosophical plot twist in verse 62 that changes absolutely everything. Dasman na bhavyate napi muchite, napi samsarati kashit, samsarati bhavyate muchite cha nanashreya prakritihi. 62.
And here is the philosophical bombshell. Therefore, no one is really bound, released, or transmigrating. It is Prakriti, supported in many ways, that transmigrates, is bound, and is released. Let that sink in for a second. This is the shocking, radical truth at the very center of Samkhya. Purusha, your true self, pure consciousness, was never trapped. It never suffered. It never needed to be freed in the first place. All of those states, bondage, liberation, reincarnation, they're all events happening within nature. They're just transformations of the subtle body, the psychological software. So here's the kicker. Liberation isn't something that happens to you. It's the moment you finally stop mistakenly thinking that the drama happening in nature is you. This slide just lays it out so perfectly. Look at the stark contrast. Purusha is never bound, but Prakriti binds herself. Purusha is never released, Prakriti releases herself. Purusha is eternally unchanging, while Prakriti is the stage for every change and action. The entire problem of existence, from this point of view, is just one grand epic case of mistaken identity. So if Prakriti is the one doing everything, how exactly does this mechanism of binding and release actually work? Well, Karika 63 explains just that. Rupai saptabher eva tubadnapti atmanam atmana prakriti. Seva cha purushartham prati vimochayati ekarupena. 63. And the translation tells us that nature itself contains both the lock and the key. Prakriti binds herself by herself through 7 forms, and for the sake of Purusha, she releases herself by one form. So here's the internal logic of how nature operates. The 7 binding forms, those are the psychological habits we've talked about before, things like attachment, delusion, vice, and so on. They're all just modifications of the intellect, of Prakriti. But, and this is the hopeful part, Prakriti also contains the key to its own unlocking, that one liberating form, which is knowledge, or jhana. So you see, even the solution is a process that happens within nature,
a mechanism that's triggered for the sake of Purusha.
And with that, the case is pretty much closed. We know who the real actor is, it's Prakriti. And we know the tool that solves the mystery, it's knowledge. So this final verse, this is the one that tells us precisely what that liberating knowledge is made of.
And so we arrive at the final verse of our entire series, Karika 64. And this one gives us the practical, step-by-step method for achieving this ultimate realization. Evam tapvavyasan nasmi name naham iti apati shesham. Aviparyayad vishuddham kevalam utpadyate jnanam. 64.
Its translation gives us the very formula for freedom, this powerful three-part declaration of truth. Thus, through sustained contemplation of the tattvas, there arises pure, unerring, decisive knowledge. I am not this, nothing is mine, and I am not the ego.
You see, this isn't just a theory, it's a practice. Step 1 is to really contemplate the principles of reality, the tattvas, everything we've been digging into in this series. And that contemplation leads to this profound threefold realization. First, nasmi, I am not this. A deep, radical disidentification from your body, your thoughts, your feelings. Second, na me, nothing is mine. A complete letting go of owning experiences or things. And finally, naham, I am not the ego. The ultimate discrimination between pure witnessing awareness and that constructed sense of me. This isn't about destroying anything. It's simply about seeing clearly for the first time.
So, after this incredible philosophical journey, after solving this central mystery, what's the final takeaway? What's the one thing we need to remember from all this?
It really all boils down to this. In the world of Samkhya, you don't achieve liberation. You don't get freedom. Why? Because your true self was never anything but free. Liberation is simply the final, irreversible shift in perspective. It's the end of looking through the lens of your body, mind, and ego, and finally recognizing yourself as the pure light of awareness that was silently watching the show all along.
And that leaves us with one last, provocative question to just sit with. The entire cosmic dance happens for the sake of this seeing. But if freedom is just a matter of seeing a truth that is already here, right now, what is it about our ignorance that has such a powerful, compelling momentum? What keeps the performance going for so long, for so many?
Thank you so much for joining us for this entire series on the Samkhya Karika. It has truly been a privilege to explore this foundational and fascinating text with all of you. If you found this explainer and the series as a whole valuable, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to our channel. It really does help us continue to make these complex topics clear and accessible. We'll see you next time.